see if we can still have meeting.
And certainly, if anybody gets to a point where they're uncomfortable with the safety of getting home, please say so and we'll adjourn.
I'll watch too.
And if sirens go off, we go where, down in the bathrooms?
Yeah.
Please.
Hi, so a thumbs up, which means I can call to order the regular meeting of the Environmental Commission of Charter Township of Meridian on April 2nd, 2025. And I would like to invite staff to do a roll call.
Chair McConnell,
Present.
Commissioner Billis, sorry, working
Balil.
on the pronunciations.
Balil, here.
Khalil.
Present.
Balil, okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sarver,
Here.
Commissioner Peterson,
Here.
Commissioner Fraser,
Here.
Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Misichek,
Very good. Here.
Misichek, better on the second one. Commissioner Batten. Here. And Trustee Lenz is absent.
Trustee Lenz sent his regrets, but provided me with some remarks that he hoped I could convey. And if we can get back to our agenda, our proposed agenda. Typically, historically, we've had many presentations, green themed presentations to this commission. We haven't so much in the last couple of years, especially since COVID kind of threw us off our game. But we're delighted this evening to have a guest speaker, which we will invite to address us before we get into the meat of our meeting and all of our minutes and other boring details. So welcome, Dr. Joy Wang.
Yes, thank you so much for the invitation, the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. My name is Dr. Joy Wong, and I am the director of the My Solar for All program with the state of Michigan. And I will share some information about our program with you all tonight. So first, I'll overview the federal Solar for All program before delving into our state program. I'll provide you some program definitions and eligibility criteria, our pilot funding opportunities that we'll have this year, our current program status, and engagement and participation opportunities. So Michigan's award is from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Solar for All program. And that was part of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund created by the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed by Congress and signed by the president at that time. The U.S. EPA Solar for All program is intended to help benefit low-income families and to provide access to affordable, resilient, and clean solar energy. There are a total of 60 recipients around the U.S., and the recipients have committed to fund residential and residential serving community solar projects to create equitable access to affordable and resilient solar and to deliver good-paying, high-quality jobs. So the My Solar for All program is a federally funded program that is dependent on these U.S. EPA funds. The state of Michigan was awarded $156 million for this program, and of that amount, 75% is going to direct project implementation to implement residential rooftop solar and residential serving community solar projects within our communities. We also have funding for enabling upgrades and associated storage with eligible solar projects. The remaining 25% will go towards community assistance, technical assistance, education outreach activities, as well as workforce training, and other programmatic needs such as program and vendor management and monitoring and compliance. The My Solar for All program will increase affordable, reliable, and resilient electricity within our state. We hope to reduce costs for an estimated 16,300 low-income households to provide them an estimated average 20% electricity bill reduction, whether on their actual electricity bill or a benefit that's equivalent to that, to participating low-income households through our projects. This is estimated to be about $400 to $450 per month per household, or about $11,000 to $17,000 over the 25-year expected life of these solar investments. Across all of the households that we will assist, we estimate that there will be about $303 million of benefit provided to our low-income households through these My Solar for All investments. Our program also supports improvements that are needed to install solar. So this can include roof repairs or electrical system upgrades. And these are costs that the households won't have to bear that our program can help them with. We believe that our program will also improve household and community energy reliability and resiliency. We have the associated storage funding for select projects, so you can store the electricity produced by the solar panels and use them during other times, such as during electrical outages. And our investments will help strengthen Michigan's energy independence. The My Solar for All program will also strengthen Michigan's communities and economy. We will support workforce pipeline through training and development programs and create an estimated 700 good-paying, high-quality jobs. There are also economic development opportunities for our state and communities through community solar that can be hosted within our communities that may provide a variety of different community benefits. We do have the technical assistance and community assistance opportunities to support communities to realize their goals in this space. And our program is required to use American-made and likely Michigan-made products. We do have solar manufacturers within Michigan and solar manufacturing supply chain, as well as commercial industrial companies that also work in the solar industry. My Solar for All will also support a healthier Michigan. We will support healthier homes through our residential rooftop solar investments and the households that we help in that space. By improving their roofs to install solar and updating their electrical systems, we help them improve their home health and safety. We also seek to collaborate with existing related programs like home repair programs around the state and to do more for the low-income households that we help to maximize their energy savings, their cost reductions, their comfort, and their health. We will also protect Michigan's land and water through cleaner air for everyone. We estimate that 272,000 metric tons of CO2 emissions can be avoided over the 25 years of these investments, and this is equivalent to recycling over 23 million trash bags of waste instead of landfilling them. So who's eligible to benefit from Solar for All? Well, the federal program has these requirements, and they say that income cannot be more than several criteria, and it's whichever one of these metrics is higher for the applicable area. So for 80% of area median income or 200% of the federal poverty limit, and for non-metropolitan areas, there's a third metric that can also be used, which is 80% of the statewide non-metro area AMI. So whichever one of those happens to be the highest is the income limit that is applicable. And we're required to use the latest publicly available figures from the federal government. So for illustrative purposes, in 2024, AMI for the metro area, 80% of that would be around $75,000, and for a non-metro area, it's about $63,000. And that does vary depending on the number of members in a household. Next, I'll cover some of the definitions for our program. So residential rooftop solar for our program is defined to include not only rooftop solar, but also pole-mounted or ground-mounted photovoltaic systems that deliver all of the power that's generated to residential customers. And these customers can be in existing or new single-family homes, manufactured homes, multifamily buildings, including ones that are classified as commercial buildings, as long as the solar benefits residential customers directly or indirectly. And these can be for rented or owned residential homes. For residential serving community solar, this is defined as solar PV power producing facilities or solar energy purchasing programs from a facility with up to 5 megawatts AC of nameplate capacity. And that facility has to deliver at least 50% of the power generated from the system by delivering at least 50% of the benefits derived from the power that's generated to residential customers in the same utility territory as the facility. I find this definition really exciting. I think it's a little bit obtuse perhaps, but it doesn't require that the benefits have to be on the utility bill. So I think it gives us the ability to provide some really innovative solutions on how we share the benefits from these solar projects with the low-income households. We do have funding for enabling upgrades and associated storage, and these have to be deployed in conjunction with an eligible solar project. Enabling upgrades have to satisfy two main criteria, which is that the investment is an investment in the energy or building infrastructure. So this could be like roof repairs for a household that's putting solar on the rooftop, upgrading the home's electrical system, or potentially undergrounding their electric service drop too. the investment must be necessary to deploy or maximize the benefits of the solar that is deployed there. And for associated storage, that infrastructure also is meant to store the solar generated power to help maximize that solar deployment. So we have an interest form online, and based on the responses to that interest form, we actually decided to request that the EPA allow us to do pilots this year. And this was very much due to the responses in the interest form. So thanks to anyone out there who filled out the interest form. When we were revising our work plan and budget, because Michigan originally asked for more than we were awarded, and so once we were awarded the lesser amount, we had to revise our work plan a little bit to that smaller amount. We had almost 1,000 submissions at that point and almost 400 comments. And those comments really expressed a need and a desire for these My Solar for All opportunities. There were homeowners there who were seeking relief from really high energy costs. We had a lot of interest in our communities about partnering on a My Solar for All project, not only just from homeowners who would love to have solar on their rooftops, but also from multifamily developments and even businesses within our communities who were like, I have space, I'd love to host a community solar project and give back to my neighbors in my community. And one comment that I found really striking was urgency is missing. So we heard the comments. Originally, we were planning to spend this full year developing our program and designing it and engaging with stakeholders in that process. But based on those comments, we then requested and were approved to offer pilots this year to get some projects started. So this year we will have $1 million in pilot funding for residential rooftop solar, $6.5 million for community solar, $1 million for enabling upgrades, and $375,000 for associated storage. We aim to offer these pilot funding opportunities sometimes later this month. I am very optimistic that we'll be able to meet that deadline, and I hope that we can get that out there so our communities can apply. And eligible applicants include governmental entities, tribes, nonprofits, municipal and cooperative utilities, schools, colleges, universities, and eligible property owners. We are also going to hold a couple of matchmaking sessions in advance of the pilot offering. We have one that's virtual and one that will be in person. We heard from a lot of folks that were interested. We had communities that had ideas for projects, but they didn't necessarily know how to move forward. And we had solar developers that were really interested in partnering on projects, but they didn't know the communities that had an interest in this. And there were also contractors, workforce organizations, and technical assistance providers that wanted to participate and support these efforts, but didn't know how to connect. And so we're holding these matchmaking sessions. The virtual one is on April 16th, and the in-person session will be on April 23rd, held at the My Healthy Climate Conference. To participate in the in-person session, you do have to register for the conference to attend. I have a link here, and hopefully you all can send out the slides later, so anyone who's interested can register. We are currently in this program design and input phase. Our goal is to design a really flexible program that meets the federal EPA requirements for this program, as well as our state's needs. So we're seeking input from interested parties around the state to help inform how we design the program and our offerings, and how we prioritize which projects to select. There are a variety of different ways to provide input that are currently available and also in development, and I'll share more at the end. So currently, we are federally funded. We are funded by a federal grant. And there has been some uncertainty about that in the news lately. We do have a grant agreement with the US EPA. It is a legal contract that obligates these funds for the My Solar for All program. And those obligated funds are committed to us as long as we're in compliance with those terms and conditions. We have a fully accessible grant at this time, and I'm really optimistic that that will continue. Some of our current program activities include hiring 2 contracting teams that are assisting us with this engagement and program design aspect. We have a behind-the-meter solar and storage study with the Georgia Institute of Technology and supported by the Great Plains Institute, as well as additional assistance from the Great Plains Institute and Farallon Strategies on various aspects of our program. We'll be at the My Healthy Climate Conference, as I said earlier, with that in-person matchmaking session and other activities, so please register by April 13th if you're interested. And that pilot RFP with $8.875 million of funding will be hopefully released by the end of this month. We hope that you all stay engaged with the My Solar for All program. We have a virtual listening session series that we've already started. We have 2 more that are upcoming. You can click on the links to register for those, and we also have recordings of the past sessions if you're interested in viewing those. Please fill out our interest form if you haven't already. Sign up for our listserv to get updates on our program. And we have some surveys currently available for people to submit their feedback on pilots as well as community solar. And these will be really informative for us, especially as we think about how to design the program offerings and to select the final projects that we do award. We'll have more of those to come. We hope that you'll participate in future work groups or come to office hours if you have questions. And we have updates on our website as well. So, the matchmaking session, if anyone has ideas for their community but doesn't know how to, doesn't have the connections to make it happen right now, please consider signing up for those. And last but not least, we really hope that our communities develop these projects and apply for these funding opportunities. So thank you all so much for your time tonight. I'm really excited about this opportunity for our low-income households in Michigan and our communities, and I really do think that the future is bright in Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Are you available for questions?
Yes.
Anybody have any? John?
Yeah, well, Joy, thanks for coming out tonight to chat with us. And, related to the relationship with EPA, I'm sure you get lots of questions about that. It sounds like EPA has committed to the funding for the pilot phase. Have they already obligated the money for the next phase, which would be more programming, or?
So the $156 million has been fully obligated to the state of Michigan for the My Solar for All program.
Okay, and they have not made any attempt to crawl back those dollars?
We have a fully accessible grant at this time, and we're going full speed ahead.
Good, okay.
Yep.
Other questions? There was one minor piece that caught my eye. One of the eligible activities I believe you mentioned was undergrounding of electrical service drops. And I was curious if you might say a few more words about that. Is that related to maintenance costs or to resiliency? I've heard people say various things about the wisdom of undergrounding utilities, especially electrical utilities.
Yeah, so prior to this role, I worked with the Michigan Public Service Commission in distribution system planning and electric operations. And one of the things that I learned in that role is that a lot of outages happen because the electric service drop to the household is interrupted by like a falling tree branch or something like that. And in many cases, that's the homeowner's own responsibility to fix, and it's their cost to incur. And so for enabling upgrades, the way that the EPA defines it is those investments in electrical infrastructure have to be to like optimize the performance of the solar that's sited at that site. And if a customer does not have storage and cannot disconnect from the grid, they just have solar, if their electric service drop is damaged and they no longer have power, their solar will also no longer be able to supply power to their home. And so in my mind, I think undergrounding that electric service drop to increase the resiliency of the household so they experience less electrical outages should qualify as an eligible activity under the definition of what the EPA has provided. It ensures that the household can continue to generate solar energy and to benefit from that use. So I think it should be an allowable activity, and that's how I'm going to proceed.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, it's a wonderful program, and let's all hope that not only do the pilots succeed, but that the program can go on to its next phase under a supportive administration.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you for coming this evening. I see no members of the public prepared to address agenda or non-agenda items, so we can move to communications. I believe there is one in our packet.
Yes, so you do have one communication in your packet, which is our MS4 report, or the 2024 Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Report. It's just there for educational purposes, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
So for those who are not super familiar, my understanding is that we participate in a regional organization that manages our stormwater permit, which we're required by the federal government to keep current. And this is the group that organizes the communities who collaborate on that permitting process. And a lot of what they're doing is trying to mitigate pollution from runoff. And I think that this commission has at times discussed various issues about pet waste and other potential pollutants, wild animal wastes and others. So those are issues that this group pays close attention to, and the township participates as an active member.
Can you just give some examples of how the township actually, I'm not familiar with this program, so I didn't know. How does the township actually participate in this program then, or in this group?
We do have water quality monitoring that we have to conduct. So we do have several sites across the township where we'll take water samples. One of them is, for instance, Ferguson Park, adjacent to the Red Cedar River. And so we collect samples and do water quality monitoring for the MS4 permit within the township. Okay. There's also public education components. We have to have a certain banner on display once a year in the lobby of the town, or the municipal building, just educating the public. I would have to confer with our township engineer on any other components that we participate in, but predominantly monitoring water quality.
And is that information like accessible, like to be able to see what the water quality looks like and if it's getting better or worse or anything like that?
Not from our monitoring program directly. My understanding is there's these total maximum daily loads that, when they are exceeded, then remediation has to take place. But that's based on a whole bunch of different measurements, not at a single point source. So when the Red Cedar River, which is what we're monitoring, exceeds an allowable threshold, remediation has to take place.
How frequently is the water sampled and tested?
I believe it's annual. If the commission is interested, we could look at having our township engineer who oversees the MS4, everything associated with the MS4 permit, come and speak to the commission. I can't answer all the technical details because Giannis has always handled this and I haven't had to delve too deeply, but we're monitoring water quality on township property predominantly.
And I believe Michigan State and East Lansing and other participating organizations all participate in that monitoring. What I've been told by MSU experts is that E. coli that might be detected in the Red Cedar River is much more likely to be entering the township or being entering the Red Cedar River upstream of downtown Okemos. It's more the rural upstream components of our township and our county that are probably the greatest contributors to E. coli loading. But apparently they do have techniques to differentiate E. coli that is propagated in pets versus livestock, but it's not the monitoring doesn't get down to that granular level because it's much more expensive to handle.
Yeah, we're not testing the actual river water itself. That would be a much different test result. What we're monitoring is we're taking a sample of the runoff off like the parking lot at Ferguson Park and testing that sample before it outlets to the river. So we're not testing the river, the water quality of the river itself. We're testing our runoff from parking lots and other hard surfaces before it gets outletted to the river to make sure that we're not adding pollutants to the river.
I mean, it seems like we could also easily ask somebody from the organization to fill us in on that broader picture as well.
Absolutely, we could also do that as an upcoming presentation. Jack, I know Jack has been working with Giannis because he's going to be doing more on the MS4 permit side. Jack, anything that you want to come up and add?
Sure, Cynthia, or Commissioner Cynthia. I think I'm right now.
Can you get to the microphone so you'd be on the, yeah.
Just a quick touch on your question there. I believe right now we're on a 5-year sampling cycle, and that's based on compliance to be within like a certain parts per million, a certain concentration of the E. coli that we're monitoring for. If those values start to exceed a certain amount, then our sampling interval increases. I think it goes up to every 2 years. But right now, we're on our 5-year cycle, and we're just now, 2024, I believe, is the end of our last cycle. So 2025, we're actually starting our new cycle of testing this month. And yeah, all going well, it'll continue to be a 5-year cycle. If things start to change, then we'll adapt to keep up with that.
Thank you. Other questions on this agenda item? Very well, moving then to approval of the agenda. Anybody have any changes, additions, subtractions, modifications? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted as circulated. Approval of the minutes. I provided some minor corrections to staff and a revised version was circulated, and Commissioner Frazier, I think, has identified a few more and communicated those to staff. Did you want to point them out, or are they minor enough that we can?
They are very minor, so just minor typos and probably not worth mentioning or taking time to mention, but staff does have them, so.
Thank you. Any other changes to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as amended ×2. Moving on to new business 8A, green grants. We got a bunch of stuff in our whole packet here about green grants. First of all, thank you to staff and our subcommittee, our committee, for really quick turnaround on bringing us recommendations, and look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Chair McConnell and Commissioners. So this evening in your packet, you do have the 6 applications that we received and a recommendation from the Green Grant Committee. So the first thing I would note is the Cornell Woods Homeowners Association. We did have a couple of questions for them, predominantly, and I'll go to a map real quick just so I can show everyone the parcel that we're discussing right now. So the committee's idea with the Cornell Woods Association application, they had requested $7,000. The minimum that they requested in order to be able to proceed with the project was $5,000. So the committee is currently recommending $5,000 for their award. And the parcel that we are talking about is located right here. So this is Cornell Road right here. This is Cornell Elementary School, Grand River Avenue. And so we're talking about this site right here. So it's just down the road from Cornell Elementary. And so the committee's concept was, would the applicant be willing to allow this site to be used for educational purposes, which would add another component to their project? And if so, would they be willing to install educational signage as a component of their project? And then also, would they be willing to, right now, they're not really proposing a bioswale. They're really proposing native plantings at existing grade. And as you can see on the site, stormwater collects right here in the low area on the site. And so our third and final suggestion to them was that they consider shrinking the footprint of the plantings. Right now, they're proposing about a 1/4 acre worth of plantings. And so we suggested that perhaps they work with their contractor and actually create a detention area, excavating down approximately 2 feet, so that they're actually collecting the stormwater and managing that stormwater in a finite area. Obviously, there'd be an added cost to the excavation, but if they shrink the footprint overall and create an actual stormwater detention area on the site, we thought that might be a more constructive use of their dollars than doing a 1/4 acre planting area. So we have not heard back from them yet, but the committee was thinking that we could reconvene and reconsider their application and possibly increase it depending on the answers to their questions. So that's a little bit of background on the Cornell Woods Homeowners Association application and why it was recommended for the minimum award currently. The other one that we are currently waiting on more information from would be the Mid-Michigan Land Conservancy. They didn't specify how many trees they would plant, and there were some ambiguities in their application. I just received their 2020, I have their 2024 application materials, and I want to review those relative to the 25 application because they're both proposing tree planting. And so I just want to make sure both applications are separate from one another and compare the costs relative to the number of trees planted, so we're gathering more information. We would bring that one back to you at your May meeting. So the recommendation before you for the 4 applicants that we're recommending awards for at this time would total $13,557 with an average award of $2,259.50. Going through the applications really quick, just to give you an overview. We touched on Cornell Woods Elementary, so going back down. So this is the Girl Scout Troops application, and this is dealing with the courtyard, or what do they call it? Outdoor classroom at Hazlitt Middle School. I wasn't sure if any of the commissioners, Commissioner Batten or some of the other commissioners want to speak to this application, but this one was viewed very favorably by the committee.
I have worked closely with Bridget Booth at the middle school for many years. I had her as a teacher when I was in 8th grade. And she has continuously tried to work on the courtyard, or outdoor classroom in this case, at the middle school. But she herself can only do so much, and she got one grant, but again, it only did so much. And so she has been working with this Girl Scout troop to keep improving this. And I see that now they are getting grant. So it's all in aims to grow the use of the courtyard, as throughout our district they're not really used, especially at some schools, and they're in general a decent plot of land that is perfect for one class to go out and utilize. So I think I would agree that this is a great idea to give a grant to.
Yeah, and I personally don't have a lot of information about the middle school. One comment I will make is recently at our high school, we've done some, they're called learning walks, where we can visit other classrooms and see things that are going on in other classrooms, just to kind of help us as teachers know what else is going on in the building and learn from other teachers. While there, I did witness some classrooms while I was there going out into that courtyard area and doing a little bit. So I know they really want to utilize it for further educational opportunities. So I think it's a huge, I think it's a good thing. Absolutely.
So essentially, they're looking, the project scope would be cleaning up the courtyard, providing for some usable seating, a shade structure that could be moved throughout the courtyard. So generally speaking, just cleaning up the courtyard, seating, and a shade structure to make it more usable for the classrooms that would like to make use of it. So
Yes.
kind of a seed investment. I imagine we might see a future green grant application for additional improvements after this first one. Any questions on the Hazlet Middle School Girl Scout Troop application?
No, but I will add, just to grow our understanding of this, in the school while I was there, there were surveys and various other things that circulated to see if teachers would use the courtyard more, if it was in a state that would be more usable to them. In the resounding answer was yes. Like having a space with seating and shade where it could be used almost in every season, every month. It wouldn't be a waste to the school or for a grant to be awarded.
I seem to recall some pictures in your presentation in outdoor spaces, so makes a lot of sense. Any other questions on this application? What else we got?
And then our most frequent applicant slash awardee for the green grants, the Montessori Radmore School on Mount Hope Road. They submitted an application for a solar-powered pond pump for the greenhouse. I don't know why it keeps, whenever I click into it, it starts filling in the Girl Scouts information, so I can't really scroll on this one due to an IT issue. My apologies for that. But they also are proposing native plantings. This still does the same thing here.
I was doing that when I tried it too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I wasn't anticipating that. But predominantly the solar-powered pump and native plantings, which they've been doing similar projects on their campus. I think this would be their fourth green grant, if I recall correctly. And they do have a diagram here.
So I guess I had a question. So similar to like if they've, had past green grants too, is this like for a new area or what makes this grant, I guess, different from what they've already gotten in the past?
Yeah, and admittedly, I'm not intimately familiar with their campus and all prior grant awards, so I'm not 100% sure on the distinction.
I think I can
Correct me if I'm wrong,
comment.
but I think there was a nature trail, and there was some improvement or construction of a shed at one, but for butterfly enclosure. Am I getting that right? Am I making stuff up?
I can comment a little. I paid a site visit over the weekend to assess it. And the areas that they indicate on this map in brown are areas with invasive species that they want to address. So part of the plan is to remove those species and then selected plantings in other areas that support designated kind of educational zones that they have, like they have a bat garden with several installed bat houses, but there's no vegetation underneath it.
Oh, okay.
So they would supplement that. In the bee garden, additional pollinators would be planted around the bee garden, things like that.
Okay.
And so it all builds upon infrastructure that they've been working on for years.
Okay, thanks.
And there are trails that there are no trespassing signs, so it's a little intimidating, but there are trails where you can walk through and appreciate it. And I would say excellent signage as well.
So it is publicly accessible? Like you can walk on there?
I had no problems getting in, but it was a weekend, and I'm not sure what would happen during school hours.
It's private property, so it's legally not publicly accessible, but with it being a private school, I doubt they're going to give the public too much trouble if they're walking on the trails. The trails are represented by the blue lines here on their site plan.
My recollection from past discussions is kind of like the Okemos schools, please enjoy our campus while we're not here.
Okay.
And I believe I've heard that neighbors make use of the trail system on the weekends and such, that it's kind of becomes a little bit less intimidating to walk your dog when there aren't kids out there playing.
It's definitely not public, but I don't think anyone's going to give members of the public that are being responsible on site any trouble when school's not in session. And the mycology garden, I know that was one of their previous green grants, so we funded the mycology garden right there. I know that for certain.
I wonder, maybe not for this particular project, but in the future, in terms of public accessibility, if we could invite the applicants for this kind of project to, at the very least, invite other educators in the region to visit with either individually or with classes or whatever it might be, to get inspiration for the kinds of things that are available, even if it's not, as a way of kind of creating that outreach, well, without having, tour groups.
Any other questions on the Radmore School? Okay. Seeing none, our next applicant was the Pine Creek 2 Hazlet Condo Association, so another homeowners association. This is for the removal of invasive species on some of the open space parcels that the HOA owns. And it is located adjacent to some wetlands. I think they attached, here we go. So for point of reference, Hazlet Road would be up here. Bayonne Avenue is right here. So we are a little bit west of what you would think of as downtown Hazlet here. And then Creek Landing is the cul-de-sac, public cul-de-sac that runs through this area. So here is the existing wetland on site. And so they're proposing invasive species removals here along the wetland, and then also here along the wooded area on the north of the site. And they received a green grant last year for some invasive species removals as well.
The illustration suggests it's not a formal wetland delineation.
No, I don't think they would have had the resources or the wherewithal to have the wetland delineated on their own.
So they wouldn't be subject to regulations regarding work in a wetland buffer.
We'll talk to them about the buffer, and it's a tough one.
Well, if it were a designated wetland, I don't think they'd have any trouble getting a variance to do work in the buffer that was removing, planting native species. That's what you want to have happen in a buffer, right? It's not like they're trying to build a swimming pool.
Yep. They're going to need a lot of help walking through the process with planning, but we can do that. Take a look really quick.
It also just occurred to me that a lot of these projects are quite similar, and it would be super to see connections between the funded projects during implementation, so they're learning from each other, and maybe even sharing resources in terms of contractors or others, not necessarily trying to shove all business one way, but if you're a homeowners association, how many times are you hiring a contractor to do invasive weed removal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was part of thinking about, some of these invasive species, it can take years, it's like pulling weeds in your garden, right? You keep pulling weeds. So it'd be nice to have a strategy, and maybe if it's something that they work together with other, that there's some, at what point, like there's some success, make sure there's success, and that there's some end point, I guess.
Yeah, how they're tracking progress, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because it's not going to be a one and done when you're with invasive species,
Right.
because they're constantly spreading.
If it were a formal wetland mitigation, our township wetland consultant would be looking at the property to make sure that the mitigation was successful. And that may be something we consider in the future, is when we're funding this kind of remediation, that we set aside funds for our consultant to go and look and say, yeah, that or at least look at the plan and say, yeah, that plan makes sense, because we don't all have that expertise. And B, to visit the site and say, yeah, that seems like it's working.
Yeah, it's a tough call because delineating that wetland is going to cost almost as much as we're giving them, probably, close to it. I mean, it's a $1,000 grant and it starts to become,
And
we're gonna also spend hundreds of hours or hundreds of dollars worth of man hours walking them through the process of getting a wetland use permit, because that's not, if we send them an email asking them to go and obtain one, they're just gonna be left scratching their heads. They're not gonna know how to go through that process. But we
Well-
can work with them on that.
Yeah, let's try not to impose any more regulation than we need to. If they're not planning to disturb something that we think is a wetland, then we don't have to start delineating, in my view. But providing them some expertise about what we've done in the past in terms of remediation,
Or
something we
maybe
can consider.
they could work with, with Emma Campbell, you know.
I can actually point out that their application included the statement that in-service sessions were held prior to last year's project with Vern Stevens and Emma Campbell,
Oh, sweet.
so
Great.
that they've already consulted.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yep. At a minimum, we'll connect them again with Emma and just have Emma kind of give them a delineation line in the field of where not to go past. So at a minimum, we'll take that step. And then the last application was actually the committee's favorite, which was the YMCA, and they're looking at creating an outdoor education space. And once again, the moment I click into it, it populates the Girl Scout app.
I'm presuming the committee had access to legible copies of all the
Yeah,
content.
they did. It was when I merged the file. Whatever we did when we merged the file, it. But one thing within the YMCA's application that was the most notable is that they included information on contacting the press to do some public relations and bring some attention to their project.
You got 2 periods between Meridian and mine. Yes, I picked notes. Used to do it for a living. Well, that's bold.
Okay, here we go. So they have 2 existing outdoor nature camps, and they're intending to create a nature education component at the Parkwood YMCA on Hazlitt Road. So they're looking to have a space that would accommodate 10 to 20 children at a time, ages 3 through 11. This would be for their preschool youth and their summer day camp kids. They're serving a little over 1,000 youth currently. And they plan to make use of existing trees and green space for the educational or outdoor classroom. Surrounding nature is their backdrop. They're looking at constructing a canopy for shade, benches, an outdoor chalkboard, which they did have a drawing here in their app. Classroom seating. They're looking at programming surrounding environmental sustainability and specific units that would highlight outdoor education, such as native plantings. In terms of their community outreach, which the committee discussed quite a bit, so they're prepared to actually do a press release to display the grant and what they're investing in with the grant dollars. And they're willing to partner with the township on their press release. They're also talking about having Channel 10 come out and do a segment spotlighting their project. And then I believe they reference social media content. Yep. So they're going to do some social media posts and content on their Facebook page and other social media accounts. And then also promotion within their YMCA membership and program participants for the camps and the preschool program. So probably the most robust community outreach plan that we've seen amongst any of the applicants, but also the applicant who's most equipped to do public outreach, right? So, and let's see if, there we go. Okay. Just put the W9 at the beginning. So I believe this is just a picture that they kind of drew for inspiration. I don't believe it's their current campus, but that's kind of what they're looking at, right? So like a cedar framed outdoor chalkboard for an outdoor classroom setting, using tree stumps and timber to create benches, shade structure. So that's kind of what they're envisioning and their inspiration for the project. Any questions on the Parkwood YMCA application? Okay.
So the grant would be for the materials, and then are they building it themselves, or is it the match part, or?
My recollection from the application is that they are sourcing some materials from other Y facilities out in the, I'm not sure where they're located, but they identified logs and things that they'll be using as
Okay.
part of the construction. So some of the cost is for lumber. And I think all the labor was in-kind labor, right?
Yeah, they're looking at 2,607 for lumber and other building materials.
Okay.
And then they're projecting or estimating about 1,200 in-kind volunteer hours. That might even be underselling it if they're working with $2,600 in material. Usually it'd be more of a 1-to-1 ratio, labor to material, so they might even be underselling themselves a little bit.
All right, if there's no further questions on the specific grant applications, normally we would I would entertain a motion to approve the recommendation from the committee. That a formal motion has been provided on page 16 of the PDF. If somebody would like to do that, either a member of the committee or anyone else who's got it handy.
I'm happy to make that motion, and I move to approve awards of $5,000 for the Cornell Woods Homeowners Association, $1,000 for the Girl Scout Heart of Michigan Troop 337, $3,950 for the Montessori Radmore School project, $1,000 for Pine Creek 2 of Hazlet Condo Association, and $2,607 for the YMCA of Metropolitan Lansing Parkwood YMCA branch.
I have one question.
I'll need support for that.
Second.
Now we have a motion on the floor and support. Questions?
Just a
Discussion.
question, and I know you said that there was some kind of back and forth discussion with a couple of the applicants and a couple items. So would we approve that and then amend later if that were the case? How would that work?
My understanding is that this motion covers the recommended amounts that we saw in this table here. And in one case, the amount may move back up to the requested rather than the minimum, depending on the answers to the questions, and that would be a new motion at a new meeting. And that this motion does not cover the Mid-Michigan Land Conservancy, which we would also consider at a future meeting should the committee propose it.
Great, thank you.
We have 20,000 budgeted, so we can almost approve, the full amount request that we had for each applicant. We're just $757 shy. So we'll bring it back in May for the Mid-Michigan Land Conservancy and the Cornell Woods Homeowners Association.
Thank you. Commissioner Frazier.
Just another question, if I could. Back on the Cornell Woods one, you mentioned one of the ideas is to try to incorporate Cornell Elementary and have the kids be on site for educational purposes. Would there be any liability concerns with that for the homeowners association?
And that might be one of their concerns when they come back. They might say they have liability concerns.
Okay.
I mean, it's a relatively flat piece of land.
And it's safe to get from the school site to that property? Just sidewalk or whatever?
There's a sidewalk.
Well, the homeowners wouldn't bear any responsibility if someone were injured on a sidewalk, so if they're walking on the public pathway. But I do take Tom's point, and I had that same thought, and that might be why they come back and say no. But then it's up to the committee in terms of whether or not we want to increase their allocation or maintain it at the existing 5,000, right? And it could be, we could get a mixed bag of responses, right? They might go for the excavation and constructing what would more typically be referred to as a bioswale, but not grant, the school groups access to the site. So we might get a mixed bag in terms of the responses.
Or maybe some of those similar outreach efforts where even if the kids aren't coming to the site, that they can learn about it, what's going on nearby the school, because a lot of them are going past it all the time. And many of them live in that kind of.
Yep. And we could even still do the educational signage even if classrooms don't have access to it, right? That way a passerby would still be able to take a look at the signage and looking where the stormwater does accumulate on the site, you know, it's not that far from the pathway. 80 feet from the pathway is where, you know, the bioswale would hypothetically go.
Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving that motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, staff and committee, again for your work on this. That was a rapid turnaround and a great set of projects coming in around the budget, and this is how the system's supposed to work. Moving on to 8B, Climate Sustainability Funds. Staff has again provided us a memo in our packets with a recommendation for one project we might consider. Please tell us more, Gag.
Greetings again, Commission. So looking at our 2024 Climate Sustainability Funds, we allocated 30 grand to this, and we've so far spent about 5,000 of that, so we've got about 25K remaining there. We are eager to hear if there are any potential uses of this funding that the Environmental Commission has maybe brainstormed. But in lieu of that, we also have a suggestion from the township, and our suggestion to allocate the rest of that funding, as opposed to piecemealing it up into a few projects, we would look to use all of it in a bioswale creation project. This would be, excuse me, this would be located at Marshall Park. Here, this is at Lake Lansing to the to the east here, Bliss Street, Marsh Road, and Lake Drive. So the township is already planning to resurface these roads in this area. And when we do so, we try to tackle any kind of drainage issues that may be occurring there. We are aware of some pretty significant drainage issues in this area, particularly this southeast corner of Marshall Park, as becomes more like Marshall Pond in significant stormwater events. So without the funding, the township would be proceeding to do some improvements on these road surfaces here. And we would, by default, just create ditches on the sides of the road in order to divert some of that stormwater. But with this funding secured, we would like to expand that initiative and create bioswales along this edge here instead, and improve the existing drain tillage we do have here. For those unfamiliar, a bioswale it's a ditch, but it's an enhanced ditch, and it has some improved drainage ability and ability to convey water away from a site. So here's kind of a breakdown of what one might look like. Here's maybe an idea of one that's, let's see if I can zoom in on that at all. A little expanded, that shows its connection to a hard surface, a parking lot, with a drainage channel that would capture the flow from that lot and bring it to a bioswale, a drainage area. The real big perk to these is kind of integration with natural wildlife. We get to, as opposed to just having a ditch with some grass in it, we can plant some native species in there. We can draw some biodiversity to the area. It creates a lot less maintenance of the area going forwards. There's less mowing and groundskeeping that needs to be done in these spots once they're established. There's a couple bullet points here that kind of exude some of those benefits as well. Ultimately, we'd be looking to both improve the aesthetics and functionality, I'll call it, of the park, make it more park-like and more usable to the community here, as well as solving a major drainage problem that we get a lot of reports from these residents on. If you can see this house right here with the carport in front of it, we've got a picture from them looking out at this beautiful lake they've got in front of their property here.
You got lakefront and lake back.
Yeah, lakefront property and lake back property here. This is that southeast corner of the park we'd be looking to install those bioswales and improve the drainage ditches on. I think we have one more picture here. Yep, this is looking north into the west of that road here. We see the pond that develops there. So going forwards, if the commission likes this idea, we'd be looking to invite our engineering firm in, Spalding D. Decker, to come in to the commission and give a small presentation maybe, or a little back and forth on what their design concepts would be. This would allow us to get into the weeds per se and kind of pick out which native species we'd like to have there. So we'd be able to work with them and create, have a good opportunity for input on getting a design together that would help with the drainage issues out there and hopefully help some of the residents out there, as well as offering some notable environmental benefits. So this is a brief overview of kind of what we're thinking here. We've reached out to the park department. They're on board with it. We haven't gone over specifics with them yet until we get the blessing of the Environmental Commission, but we just checked with them. Hey, are you interested in something like this? Yes, we are. Great. So going forwards, we've kind of checked with them. It's item number one. We do have this covered. So going forwards, we'd be reaching out to our engineering firm, inviting them to come in and speak. And then just to do our due diligence, we would also look into alternative mitigation plans to deal with some of that flooding out there. Ideally, we'd be ending up with the bioswales, but it's important to cover all of our bases. So yeah, I think that's generally kind of what we've got in mind for this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions for staff?
So I had a couple questions, but the first thing to do is the funding, the available funding and the climate assistance. So I was looking through the notes from last year. Didn't we have other projects, right, that also were approved, and like the recycling center signage and the composting one, right? So
Right. If I may, I was
please.
going to bring up those same two issues. That there was approval from the Environmental Commission and I believe from the Township Board for funding both of those projects. As you indicated, one was for signage at the Meridian recycling site, and the other was for additional food composting at the Meridian Market. I think the cost of that one was $2,500. The cost of the signage was very minimal, $635. So maybe we could still squeeze those in and consider this one as well. However, one other issue that is remaining out there is that the Green Burial Group had submitted a proposal for $10,000. That one was kind of put on hold by the commission, and it was suggested that that group really needed to present to the township board before moving forward. And I know they're in the process of trying to finalize that presentation. So thank you, Commissioner Lee. I too wanted to put that out there, that there are some other projects that we had approved funding for, and this other one that's still pending. So.
and the wetland education one, the signage was done. It came in under what we had originally approved funding, but there was, I think, another small chunk for the buffer sign, and there's a couple other things. So I need to get with Emma Campbell to see, is she still going to move forward with that stuff and how much is it going to cost? So it may not take up the whole amount that was originally allocated, but there may be a little more, that would have been part of that original proposal then, so.
We can check with Emma to see if there's any outstanding signs that need to be purchased. I do remember Leroy mentioning the recycling center signage to me on one occasion, and he just sent Jack a document today that does include it. For that, though, I would recommend that we go back and double check our contract with the vendor that runs the recycling center, because that's an operational cost, and I'm fairly certain that's not a cost that the township should be incurring unless we want to subsidize the private company that's operating the recycling center. I think that's something that we could just compel our vendor to do.
Well, it sounds to me as if a little bit more fact-finding is needed on prior discussions, proposals, grants, and expenditures before we give too much of a blessing, as it were, to this particular idea. So I'm sounding like we're probably not ready to make a formal action on this recommendation this evening, and I'm not sure the staff were expecting it, but great to have the institutional memory building itself back up and not letting those things get through the cracks again, so. Keep going, yeah.
I just wondered, can we ask questions about the biosphere thing, or?
Oh, no, absolutely,
Oh,
might as well. I have got a couple myself.
One quick clarification, Commissioner Lee, did you say you were thinking it was the buffer signs specifically that Emma still needed to order?
Yeah, I think the last email she sent me was, that she had purchased the 5 signs that we originally had budgeted, and it was less than, what we originally had allocated. And then she said that she was still looking into the buffer signage.
Okay.
I think originally we had budgeted only, I think it was $250. And then there was some other stuff in there that I need to get with her to see if we still want to do. There was some additional things like the letters and social media campaign or something like that, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, we can handle that, and.
And those were compostable bags for people using the food waste drop-off.
It was that, also the cost of the pickup through My Green Michigan, as well as some promotional, educational type efforts that the commission added.
That was for the gleaning?
It's really separate from the gleaning. It's kind of connected, but it's more for composting specifically at the farmer's market. Currently, there is an opportunity for residents to drop off their food compost at the farmer's market. The idea behind the proposal was really to expand the effort, promote the effort to more residents to try to get more participation in the program.
Yeah, if I could elaborate just a bit. So My Green Michigan is an Eagle-funded effort operated out of Hammond Farms that provides curbside organics composting. Put a curb cart out like you would your trash or recycling, and they haul it down to Diamonddale and do their windrow composting with it. And we have collection points both at the market and at the recycling center that My Green Michigan services. And residents like having compostable bags that they can bring to the market rather than having to bring their compost bucket with them. And when the program originally piloted, those were subsidized and participation was good. They tried to switch to buy your own bags and they weren't going to see the growth they wanted, so that's why they were asking to continue that subsidy to try to grow the program a little bit more.
Exactly.
So just compostable bags. Was it a dispenser right in front of the compost bin at both sites?
There's actually 2 big carts for compost at the farmer's market. So that's where they would be deposited. And then the proposal would also pay for the cost of pickup on a more regular basis with additional, hopefully, resident participation. So, and then, and I can't remember, one of the commissioners, might have been Commissioner Lee, also felt it was important to really promote this effort to the residents of the township, so it might involve the communications department somewhat in trying to help with that effort. And so some additional money was added for the promotion aspect of it.
Okay.
So I did have a question because in the May notes, where we had included the proposals, it said that the cost for the composting was $93.20, but then in the June minutes, it said $2,500.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can address that too. That was a error on my part in calculation of the cost for My Green Michigan to pick up the carts.
okay.
A rather substantial error, I might add. But staff at the time found that and corrected that before we actually moved to approve that project.
So on the composting, perhaps we could connect with you, Commissioner Frazier. It seems like you're the one that's most intimately familiar with that. If I'm reading the room. All right, we can gather more information on all of that and report back at the meeting next month. But just generally speaking, I'll just preface too that just kind of big picture, just some of the conversations that Chair McConnell and I had, it seemed like the commission wanted to get into, more, a bigger project that could really be a demonstration to the community. And so that's kind of why we're bringing this forward as just kind of a bigger concept project that you might consider, because whatever balance of funds we can accomplish all those other projects. But whatever remaining funds need to be brought to the table for this bioswale concept project would be brought via the road millage. So this project wouldn't have a cap. And we could do it in concert with the Park Commission. So it could even become, we could even entertain the idea of doing joint Park Commission and Environmental Commission meetings, things of that nature. So I wanted to throw something out there that was, thinking a little bit bigger. So, but we're open to your thoughts and input. I just wanted to preface that.
Thanks. That helps me to think of the green grants as seed funding and small bits and pieces that are scattered in the climate sustainability plan, at least for now, as some bigger chunk features like solar on the public service building or whatever it might be. Specific to the bioswales being proposed here, we should remember that there were installations on the Lake Lansing Shaw corner also in that same sort of area, same sort of idea. So as we continue to look at this, understanding what we've done and how this connects to that can be helpful for us seeing us building these larger initiatives. And there was one more thing that's now escaped me, but it's okay. Couldn't have been that important, as my mother would say. Any other questions or discussion on this item from staff? I do recall, by the way, the Environmental Commission, or at least me as chair, have been invited into some of the conversations that residents have had with the Public Works Department on those drainage issues. And I think I've escaped from that email thread now, but clearly people have some serious water problems and they want some real solutions to them. So I know what the other thing was. Remind me, I'm not seeing it immediately here. Does your memo explicitly address which parts of the climate sustainability plan this proposal would address? And since we're asking our green grant recipients to do that, as we move forward, let's look specifically which objective would this meet? And I think there may also be some master plan components that low impact development or some similar language. If we're going to ask our applicants to be specific about which of our objectives they're addressing, we should be asking ourselves those same questions.
Probably water and green recycling,
My green.
the C1.
Yeah, we don't have to do that tonight. I'm just thinking that as staff goes and thinks about this more, let's dive in there and do it. But again, thanks for the spreadsheet. I took a half an hour a couple of days ago to just go back through it and see of these, 700 action items, which of them are obviously have a dollar sign attached to them. And I was surprised that not that many. We've got a lot of explore this and consider that and think about this and things. But as we continue to kind of track our progress on that climate sustainability plan, as people delve in more to their particular sections of interest, let's always keep the funding in mind for, which one, is there something in there that we could get a bang for our bucks on? Unless there's any other discussion of the agenda item 8B. Hearing none, thanks again. And unfinished business, we have none. Reports and announcements. I think we kind of covered the staff update on climate sustainability fund expenditures, right? We were just doing that. Any other staff report of note? Or township board, since trustee Lenz is not with us, and that reminds me to go and find his comments here, so.
One question that I had for the commission is whether or not there was any interest in looking at the time of the meeting. 7 PM is later than most of our meetings in the evening, and I don't know the origin of the time. It could well be that the commission has recently discussed its meeting time and wishes to stay at 7 PM, which is certainly fine, but many of the boards and commissions meet at 6 or other times, and I was just curious if the commission had any thoughts on the meeting times.
I took a shot about a year ago at moving things forward, and I don't recall the challenge and why we decided to stick with this. We did push the planning commission meetings up to 6:30, and that's actually a challenge for people who work full-time in Lansing to get here sometimes, but so far it hasn't caused too big a problem, and I personally would be in favor of an earlier starting time. So any other thoughts of commissioners on starting times?
Yeah, I would support that also, an earlier time.
I would have to reschedule I have a students I tutor and right before this, so I would have to reschedule things and.
So could it, at the minimum, take some lead time before we could switch?
Yeah.
And is 6 or 6:30 better or easier in terms of that, or?
I would really have to talk to my family about that, the family that I work with at that time, before
Gotcha.
I could answer that question.
Okay. So we can keep thinking about this and seeing how it works for individual commissioners, and if we find a point where it makes sense for everybody to move it earlier, we can do that.
And then just a quick preview of the May meeting. We will have a wetland use permit for the Schultz Vet Clinic Boardwalk project that the township is currently finishing up a design for. So we will be constructing a boardwalk along Bennett Road on the north side, along the frontage of the Schultz Vet Clinic. As a result, we will need a wetland use permit. So that will be coming before the commission at your May meeting. And then we have Val Lafferty coming to do a presentation on food rescue. So that is your current agenda for the May meeting, and that's all we have for this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this point? Hearing none, we'll move on to, now I've lost the agenda because I'm looking at something else. Liaison reports, I believe. Planning, well, that's me. That's why I've got the planning commission up here. Yeah, at the March 24 planning commission meeting, held public hearings on a second group childcare, this time west of Okemos Road, south of the railroad tracks kind of area, and continued to work on our schedule of requirements for parking spaces. Sorry. And then an unfinished business, Okemos Local Investments is another cannabis retail facility. And moving from there to Land Preservation Advisory Board.
Yeah, so the Land Preservation Advisory Board met on March 12th. A couple items that I thought were of interest to the commission. I mentioned that the 5 wetland signs that, were developed and purchased with the climate sustainability funds should have been installed in mid-March. So there are 5 signs, one at Hartrick Park, Hillbrook, North Meridian, Central Park, or maybe not Central Park, Leg Park, and Nancy Moore Boardwalk. So if you get a chance to go check out those education signs, then I'm hoping to check them out sometime. And then I mentioned earlier to the commission that we are going to be starting to look at the acquisition prioritization or the acquisition scoring process. So we're going to start working on that. The township and Emma Campbell then worked with Michigan Waterways to do a Red Sea River cleanup with the Michigan Waterways stewards. So that seems like it's a partnership that's working really well. Started out, sounds like they were mostly removing, trash out of the river. A lot of, what was it, the scooters that got dumped into the river and stuff. But they're starting to talk about maybe working to address invasive species. And that group partners a lot with the fraternities or the Greek system on campus, so that's kind of cool. And I don't know if you guys have heard of the lesser celandine. It's a invasive species that grows in the forest and can really crowd out and stifle the growth of native ephemeral wildflowers, especially in the spring. And so it's a pretty nasty invasive species. So we're going to be, the township's going to start working on addressing that, trying to control that invasive species at Ted Black Woods and Ottawa Hills Park. And they did a prescribed burn. We did a prescribed burn at the Davis Foster Preserve. Did you get to see it? Or?
I was talking earlier, I was changing buses at the Okemos Meyer, and everyone in the parking lot was looking at us saying, we have enough forest to be burned. But it's a very distinct look because it's a wide area and it's a low intensity burn. So it's kind of dark at first and then it just sort of goes all light and then dissipates. And but it caught everybody's attention.
It's pretty cool, yeah. And then she just shared a report about the conservation, the Meridian Conservation Corps for 2024. And it's pretty impressive. There are 384 members now for the Conservation Corps. And they contributed 659 hours of stewardship to the township.
That's like a battalion.
I know. She's built a little army, so. Yeah, and that's it.
Thank you for that report. Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Any action?
Yeah, we did have a meeting, and you may remember that there were previous discussions about a new MISTA affordable housing TIF program, tax increment financing, that initially the township board didn't seem very interested. The authority, didn't seem that interested, but it's back on the table for discussion.
Okay.
And, it's one of those things that will take some discussion. So it is, it's designed to work with developers and make a portion of a housing development affordable. And make that possible through using that TIF mechanism. So that's was the most newest development. Stay tuned for the next chapter.
All right. Parks.
Park Commission, I was able to attend the March 11th Park Commission meeting, and at that, they talked about the Park Commission liaisons to the various commissions, and Mike McDonald on the Park Commission will be serving as the liaison to the Environmental Commission. So he will be my counterpart on that side. The major discussion item at that March meeting was ongoing planning for a township cricket field. And this is a somewhat challenging due to the size, dimensions, and layout of a standard cricket field, which requires 3 to 4 acres, is oval in shape, 500 feet by 600 feet, and it has a central paved pitch. So it's very different than a lot of the other existing park facilities. They appear to have a lot of enthusiasm to go forward with creating a cricket field in the township, and as a temporary solution at least for practice fields. The Park Commission has narrowed down consideration to 3 temporary locations, which include the Nancy Moore baseball fields, the Newton Road Park, and Hillbrook Park, none of which is ideal due to the shape of the existing facilities. They're also thinking of working with Ingham County Parks Department to explore shared use at Lake Lansing Park North. That's a county facility, so the township doesn't have any scheduling ability there, but evidently those baseball fields are underutilized, and I think they might be able to come up with a solution there. They're working on coming up with a practice or a field sharing schedule for summer 2025 practice fields using the facilities they've identified. And then they're also looking at the southern section of North Meridian Park as a potential permanent location for a cricket field. The limitations there are that there's insufficient parking, so they'll have to address that issue, and they may have to create a new entrance off of North Meridian Road to service the area that they're thinking of. So the Parks Commission also is updating their memorandum of understanding with the Friends of the Historic Meridian and extending the lease, I think, to for another 5 years. The next meeting for the Parks Commission is Tuesday, April 8th at 4:30, and that they expect an update regarding the senior center, probably from the Senior Center Task Force.
Great, thanks for that detailed report. I have seen folks practicing cricket in front of Chippewa School in the past, so clearly there's an interest and a demand. That's really interesting to see happening. Any other questions for Park Commission? If not, we will move on to teams. Energy team.
Well, we have our Solarize meeting next week, April 9th, 6:30 to 8 at Henry's. And when I checked the other day, we had 24, 25 pre-registered, and I'm sure we'll pick up some more people between now and next week. So, so far, so good.
Thank you. Green team.
Green Team is focused on our spring recycling event that's coming up later this month on April 26th. It's a Saturday from 9 in the morning to 1 o'clock. And again, it's similar to previous spring events where we collect metals, bikes, paint, document shredding, egg cartons, and then those that are consumers, energy customers can also participate in a rebate program for small appliances there as well. So that's, again, what we're focused on at the present time. And last I knew, I think we still needed volunteers. So if anybody wants to help out that day, that would be excellent.
Thank you. Food and composting. Do we have anybody that would like to speak to food and composting this evening? We will have, as we heard, a presentation at a forthcoming meeting about the food rescue operation, and we can also hear about composting at that time. Green burial team, we heard a little bit earlier. Do you have anything to add further?
Nothing really to add. I did talk to the chair of the committee earlier today. They are finalizing their presentation to get ready to formally ask for to be included as an agenda item on the township board schedule. So hopefully that will occur soon.
Thank you. Moving on to high school activities and fun stuff.
So March has been quite busy for me, and I think generally the high school in our sustainability efforts. we just had spring break, so there was a little bit of a hiatus, but I'll go sort of chronologically. After our environmental commission meeting, me, one other student, and Bridget Booth went to Michigan Science Teachers Association. I mentioned that last time. Our presentation went very well. We had a great amount of people and people who seemed interested in it, not who were just coming to go, but who were invested in what we were talking about. And we were primarily talking about how Bridget Booth has collected students to advocate for what they care about. And in our case, that was the environment and sustainability in our schools. And kind of bringing that into education and stuff about cross-curricular education. So bringing things like sustainability and climate change into more than just science, because it doesn't affect just science as a subject. And that went very well. And quickly after that, me and the same student, Maya Beauregard, got invited to a youth climate council for the state of Michigan. So some students connected with MyCan, which is Michigan Climate Action Network, and they advocated to start a board, council for students to get together and talk about the environment and climate change. And we've had 2 meetings now, one just before this environmental commission meeting today. And we're just getting our bearings still, and we're trying to come up with kind of a mission statement or a more succinct, I guess, definition to what we will be doing. But primarily it will be to share and advocate different initiatives around the state. We have students from Novi, Hazlitt, Okemos, people in the UP, all sorts. And then also just growing those things. So bringing those smaller initiatives and building them up to grow those things, hopefully, is the end goal. And it's a great group of people who are all very motivated. And then we had a district sustainability team meeting. It was a smaller group than the first time, which is a tendency, but that went very well. And we're also trying to come up with kind of a mission statement to align all of us on a similar trajectory on where we want to go. We really want to see some examples of other schools who have gotten a good district plan on how to tackle climate change and sustainability. So we're going to start looking for resources and people to look out to and try to get some advice on kind of where to go. Our superintendent is very keen on growing this, but he himself is not well versed in sustainability and things like that. And lots of the teachers on the board aren't, but it's great to see that there are some people who care enough to go and educate themselves as educators. Yes, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think so. And we were sad, actually, that we ended up not getting a green grant application in because of the short timeline between when the applications were made
And our
available,
spring
and then
break.
we left for spring break. And we didn't get back till Monday, so we missed that,
But we're gonna try to come up with hopefully another source to fund our rechargeable batteries.
yeah. So
We'll see.
that's what happens.
Great, interesting and exciting. Not seeing any members of the public for comments. Moving on to other matters and commissioner comments. I mentioned earlier that I'd heard from Trustee Lentz, and he expressed he was sorry that he couldn't attend the meeting. He's at the Michigan Township Association Annual Conference, learning skills for his job as a township trustee. A couple of highlights he would have wanted to share. I would encourage everyone on the board, on the commission, who care about the environmental impact of transportation to fill out the survey for the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission for their update to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This is a great way to let your voice be heard regarding transportation in our region, which we know has a relationship to our environmental impact as humans. The survey can be found at movingmidmichigan, all one word, .org. And I'll just tack on there, kind of like the municipal stormwater permit, the Tri-County Regional Planning Agency is our municipal planning organization. That's our connection to federal funds. And their Metropolitan Transportation Plan is their guiding document for applying for funding for transportation projects. So it feels very bureaucratic and in the weeds, but if it doesn't go in the plan, it's not going to go in the proposal. So if you want to have some input on that one, that's a way to do it. He also says he spent the day of March 26th with the Tri-County Regional Planning Department staff, including an hour with the environmental staff, learning more about our role in the region. First and foremost, they were quick to say that Meridian is basically the model community in mid-Michigan of how to care about the environment and take steps as a local government to protect it. Everyone involved in making that happen should be applauded for their part in that commendation. Also related to Tri-County, I found the Meridian Township is the only community in the Tri-County to participate in their Green Stormwater Manual, which is a year-long process that Leroy Harvey went through with them. They look at every Meridian ordinance and see how we can implement ordinance changes, like allowing native plants and reducing parking lot sizes to encourage responsible stormwater programs, for example. While the next steps around those ordinances are with the Planning Commission, I want to thank Leroy for doing what no one else has, which is basically an audit to ensure our water usage is better. For those of you who weren't around at the time, we had a very active environmental coordinator at Tri-County, Cliff Walls, who got us started on looking at our ordinances and things we could do to be more green. And some of that stuff made it into our climate sustainability plan. Some of that stuff made it into our master plan. And then the city of East Lansing hired Cliff Walls out from under Tri-County, and he's now over there leading that effort in East Lansing. So great partner. Any other commissioner comments, please?
Just to iterate something about the Climate Council, I'm using it as a way to share some of the things I'm doing in Hazlet, and so are the other kids on the board. And so if there's anything that any of you would like to share with a wider audience, all of Michigan, I am able to do that. It's not all students. There are members from Eagle and all sorts of various organizations across Michigan. So I will be promoting various things we're doing in Hazlet, but if there's ever anything on a even higher level than that, I'm more than happy to share.
Not seeing any other hands, I'll put one final issue on the table. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it tonight, and I thought my neighborhood association might actually submit an application for a green grant. And both of those things caused me, and somehow simultaneously, Dan, to realize we don't have a vice chair. And we need to go back and look back at our notes and find out how we got in that pickle. But I was wondering, in the event that I am not able to attend the May meeting, I believe I will, would there be any objection to my naming Commissioner Lee as at least Chair Pro Tem, and so that you can actually have a meeting if I get run over by a hurricane or whatever? In the meantime, I think we're going to need to go through a formal process for electing officers that we must have skipped somehow, but so maybe at the next meeting we can have that on the agenda. And if anybody's interested in this, I'm very happy to pass this gavel. And I think it's very healthy to have more, have some turnover in the leadership on the commission. But I know some of us are quite new and still kind of getting our feet wet, so I'm not going to force the issue, but I'm very happy to consider anybody's interest in leadership, either as chair or vice chair. I tried to twist John's arm, but he says he's already done his duty, so. So something to think about for next time. Anything else? And without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Hope you get home dry and safe and sound. And,